I full screen the presentation. Let me start it over. Stop. Present. There you go. Can you see the full screen now?
Yep. Yeah.
Perfect. Welcome to Crypto Scams and MEV. I hope that after this, you still remain in the light and do not go and do this stuff. So what we'll be looking at today are cryptocurrency scams, an intro to MEV, the implications of MEV. Actually, I think I eliminated that one. But common MEV exploits, MEV protection, and then a small conclusion and Q&A. So let us begin. Cryptocurrency scams. There's different types, and these are like the common ones. You have phishing scams, pump and dumps, initial coin offerings, Ponzi's, etc. We're going to go through these one by one. So I included fake links with phishing because it's the most common. All you have to do is open Twitter or Discord. I'm sure everyone has seen something like this already. But basically, people or bots try to make you click their links and take you somewhere where you will provide a signature through something like MetaMask that they can later use, or simply try to make you mint something that's fake, or send a transaction with ETH instead of minting on a fake site. Usually these are like, oh, our collection has an extra 100 limited edition drop for people that didn't make it before. Click here and be one of the first ones. Go, you click, takes you to a website that looks like the real thing. And when you click on mint, it'll be a send ETH transaction instead, for example. So that's the phishing and scam links. It's really common, and unfortunately, a lot of people fall for this. Usually, people fall for it on Twitter when a Twitter account gets hacked and their favorite project / influencer tweets about something with a link, or through Discord if the Discord gets hacked. But sometimes on Discord, they don't even get hacked, but you just start getting messages from people impersonating others. So impersonating an admin, impersonating the server. And it's like, oh, this is your reminder that this is happening. Go and click on it, right? There was also a famous case where a lot of Twitter accounts from celebrities got hacked, and they started tweeting out, send Bitcoin to this address and I'll send you double back, right? And that was really bad. We have the typical pump and dumps. So a pump and dump, usually, I used to see this a lot in Binance Smart Chain, because that's where a lot of the crap coins shit coins emerged. There's like, it's basically a toxic sewer of a chain. You get all of these new coins all the time, and initially the pump and dumps were super common and easy because the people that deploy a smart contract for a new token they would either withhold a large portion of the token, let it pump, and then dump on people. But new measures started to come up to prevent the pump and dumps, to prove that it's not a pump and dump, like locking in liquidity pool, locking for a period of time, vesting, and all of these things that started to go into smart contracts. But essentially, it only made the pump and dump slower, but you still see pump and dumps all the time. And not just on Binance, you see it on ETH as well. Recently, we've seen on Twitter a lot of action with tokens, with a lot of people that just were sending tokens to random wallets, right? Sending ETH to random wallets for like the pre-sale, which is super dangerous because basically I could go out and tweet like, redacted, something's happening, send ETH here, and people would send ETH, right? It happened with a couple of influencers, and their coins, the graphs kind of look like this, but in a longer period of time. So this is, beware of the pump and dump schemes. And what I was just talking about, like the initial coin offering, people that do not launch the coin, but they present the entire roadmap, or they present something that is appealing, so they can raise funds and then launch the token. But then they either dump it or they just run away with the money that they collected. And the initial coin offering scams were a lot more common, I think, in like 2017, 2018. I'm not sure exactly, but today it's just the same thing, but it's like the same but different, right? It's Twitter influencer asks for funds because they're going to launch a token, and then they airdrop the token to people that gave them funds. It's kind of the same thing, right? They could easily just run away with the ETH. And the famous Ponzi or pyramid schemes, and most tokens are really Ponzi's. I remember for a while before I got into NFTs that I was trading a lot of crypto and reading a lot of white papers to see what tokens to buy into or not. And the term tokenomics really is more of Ponzi-nomics. There's, for every transaction, like for example, SafeMoon or something like that, where if you buy SafeMoon, you hold it, you get like a percentage of every time someone sells it, you get some back from the person that's selling. Like there's a sales tax. I don't know if SafeMoon has that sales tax, but it does have a tax. And so people are just incentivized in theory to hold, but in reality, the money is just bubbling up through those sales taxes. And sometimes the sales taxes are divided into different things. Like some people will say, hey, every time someone sells, 5% is taxed, and 1% of that goes to the liquidity pool to ensure that there's liquidity. Another percent goes to the marketing fund so that they can do marketing. Another percent is redistributed amongst holders, and another percent is burned so that there's less available circulating supply. And it all sounds super well and fancy, and at the end of the day, it's like they try to make it look like they're trying to make a sustainable token that can just increase its value over time by using the Ponzi-nomics. But at the end of the day, they're just Ponzi schemes. And I think those are like the most common crypto scams. And I want to spend more time talking about MEV than talking about the crypto scams, because the crypto scams are more well known. There's some others like through phishing or social engineering, try to impersonate you and do like SIM card swaps and things like that. But yeah, I really want to talk about MEV. So MEV basically, if you go down to the foundation of like why MEV exists, like how it works, is that miners have the ability to order the transactions of a block. And this was made so that they could order it by the most profitable first, right? It's because everyone is supplying transactions where they have gas, like gas price, or what's the priority fee, and miners are going to pick the ones that are the most profitable. So the mechanism of reordering transactions exists. There's something that's called the mempool. It's sort of like limbo for transactions, or purgatory. I don't know. Basically, when you send a transaction, that's where they go. They go to the mempool and they stay there. They're not executed until a miner picks them up and puts them in a block, processes them, right? So this mempool is there, it's public and it's observable, and that's very important to note. You can look at what's in the mempool. So like the pending transactions. And like I said, miners, benefit the most from getting the transactions that are going to be paying the most. So that's why they order this way. So the ability of miners, this ability of miners really affects the transaction speed and cost, right? Because they're picking what's most profitable, your transaction stays in the queue for longer, or you end up paying more, or you end up paying less, like depends, right? It all depends on how the miners are ordering the blocks, the transactions in the blocks. So given this foundation of how the miners are picking the transactions and the ability to reorder transactions, there's things that can happen like front running transactions, back running transactions, and sandwich attacks. All of these are possible because of this mechanism of reordering transactions. So what is front running? Basically, front running is seeing a transaction in the mempool and placing your transaction ahead of that. So a miner could have a transaction and order it ahead of another transaction, not by gas price or by priority fee, but more just by deciding on the order through another mechanism. And front running basically can modify the original intent of the transaction that's being front run. So let's take a look. So here we have a block that has 5 transactions, and we see that there's a transaction 4. Transaction 4 was going to do something, but the MEV bot realized that front running that transaction would be profitable some way. So it pays higher gas fees in this example. In other examples, it can be through something that's called Flashbots, which I'll talk about in a bit. And basically put their transaction in front of transaction 4. Imagine a simple case where someone is going to buy a Grimmy, transaction 4 is buying the Grimmy, and transaction 3 is basically sees that transaction 4 is in the mempool and wants to get that Grimmy for himself. So they front run transaction 4 and they get the Grimmy and transaction 4 fails, right? That could be an example.
Question.
And then we have,
question about so how would that benefit the person trying to get the Grimmy before the other person?
Well, imagine you're following a wallet that is doing a lot of NFT trades, and it's a profitable, wallet. You see that you know that when they buy something, it's for a good reason. You basically observe that wallet in the mempool and try to front run whatever they're buying, trusting that you'll be able to sell it afterwards at a higher price. That's just an example. Another example is sandwich attacks, but we'll see those in a little bit.
Okay. And how long do they usually stay in the mempool? Like, what is the window of opportunity for front running typically?
Well, it's going to depend on how much gas the transaction, like in this case, transaction 4 is sending. Like if transaction 4 is sending really high gas, it would be expensive to jump in front of transaction 4. But if they have low gas, then they're going to be in the mempool for longer. The thing is, the MEV bot, they will detect that the transaction is in the mempool independently of how long it's there, and either do something like match the gas or increase the gas a little bit, so that it front runs correctly. I'm not sure how long transactions can stay in the mempool. I think there's a time limit, but I don't recall the exact number right now. But I know that I've sent transactions with like 1 GUI of gas, and kept them for a long time, and then just sped them up by increasing the gas. Speeding up a transaction by increasing the gas basically sends another transaction, though. But I don't want to confuse anyone. So does that answer your question a little?
Yeah. Cool.
All right, cool. So let's go to back running. This made a lot of noise. It was news on a MEV bot that made insane profit. So I believe this was on Looks Rare marketplace that they introduced the concept of placing a collection bid. So people could just sell whatever NFT from that collection to that user. And the user wanted to place a 24 ETH bid, but he placed a 240 ETH bid instead. So some people call that a fat finger, but those numbers are so far apart that it would have to be a really fat finger. Anyways, the user placed the collection, and the MEV bot, it instantly bought a floor Moonbird and accept the bid. So imagine if I don't remember how much the Moonbird from the floor cost at the time, but imagine it was 40 ETH So if the MEV bot buys a floor moonbird for 40 ETH and in the same transaction accepts the bid of 240, basically gets 200 ETH profit, right? So that's back running. Observing the mempool or reacting to events and doing something after the fact that can, like, if you're the fastest, you will make profit, right? Poor person that sold that moonbird or bought that moonbird for 240 ETH. Yeah. So sandwich attacks. Sandwich attacks are sort of a combination of front running and back running. Basically, there's a transaction that's being sent by a user that can usually it's a swap of a coin. So I'm swapping Kfish coin for ETH. And the MEV bot will see that there's an opportunity there to inflate the price and then sell after my transaction happens. So the first slice of bread would be the MEV bot inflating the price. The filling of the sandwich would be the user's transaction. And then the second slice of bread would be the transaction after the user. And fortunately, there's not just text here, but here's some example of sandwich attacks where in the first image, you see that there's a sandwich. It's marked. This site that I got, that the image is from, because I got it from Google Images, but it's Dex Tools. You see that there's these two bot icons in the total ETH, right? So a user was going to make the swap, right, of DXP for USDC or ETH, I don't know. But the bot front ran the transaction and inflated the price. So then when the user bought the token was more expensive, and then the bot dumped the token for a profit. So that is the sandwich, the three transactions. And as you can see in the bottom image, you have, MEV bot, then poor Ivan.eth getting sandwich, right? And the way that front running and back running can be ensured for sandwich attacks is by using something that's called Flashbots, where you can basically pick up transactions from the mempool and your own transactions that are signed and ready to be sent and processed, and you can bundle them together in an order and send that to a miner and pay the miner for processing that bundle of transactions in that specific order. So if I see Ivan.eth making that swap in the mempool, I can grab his transaction from the mempool, put my transaction first and my transaction after, and send that bundle to a miner that will process it in the right order so that the sandwich attack is completed. So how can we protect ourselves from this stuff? Basically, staying out of the mempool is the first thing. When you stay outside of the mempool, the bots are not listening and not observing what you're doing. But if you're not in the mempool, then how do you get your transaction processed? And for that, there are some protocols that replace the mempool with their own mechanism to be sent to miners, and miners order the transactions in the block that way. Just how I was talking about the sandwich attacks, right? To prevent a sandwich attack, you would avoid being in the mempool. And there's Flashbots, and basically there's a Flashbots protect RPC endpoint, and RPC is how you communicate with the blockchain. It's basically taking what you want to do locally and converting that into the end result of a transaction being processed. Flashbots protect RPC does not go through the mempool. It has its own mechanism. Flashbots have their own mechanism on how to process transactions. So if you go to flashbots.net and you go to the RPC, protect RPC section, you can add it as if it was adding a network to MetaMask. And then you would stay out of the mempool. So that would protect you from front running and from sandwich attacks. But it won't protect you from back running necessarily, right? Because back running is like placing the wrong bid or a sales price. It's difficult from a tooling perspective, because sometimes it doesn't even send a transaction. Like, for example, on OpenSea, the first time that you sell an NFT, it asks you for a transaction where you are approving OpenSea to manage your NFT, so that in case of a sale, OpenSea can move the NFT to the buyer. But after that, you can change the price without sending a transaction, right? So you have to be mindful of actions when it involves bidding, selling, buying, etc. Because back running is more difficult to prevent from, like with something like Flashbots or RPC. Even though it can help in some situations, back running is usually something where the MEV bot takes advantage of a decision and action that you've already made, right? So if you take care of that action and make the right decision, the MEV bot won't have anything to do. So in conclusion, tooling will help, but ultimately the responsibility is on you. This is the unfortunate truth of the blockchain space at the moment. People that are crypto native or that know enough about the technicalities of how the blockchain works are able to take care of themselves. But you see every day people getting scammed out of their NFTs, clicking phishing links, clicking fake links, sending ETH to people. Like, a lot of the things that can be prevented have to do today with what you do. One of the beauties of blockchain is that it decentralizes, but with great power comes great responsibility. And you need to make sure that with the power that you have in the blockchain, that you're responsible with your assets. Different things can help, like having multiple wallets where you have cold storage for your most valuable assets, something that you don't connect to any site and that you don't mint, you don't do anything. It's only a receiver wallet. Then you have the other extreme where you have the degen wallet, where it's you click on everything and you assume that anything in that wallet is already lost, right? It's And that wallet is meant to try to benefit from opportunities that are super time sensitive. And then you have the in between where you have wallets that you connect to marketplaces, or that you have assets in that are like membership passes, and that you use with things like Collabland or other services that do NFT verification. So risk management is really important. And if you are responsible with your assets, then you will be okay. You know, these people that have lost Bored Apes or Azukis or whatever, having them in a hot wallet where they're connecting the hot wallet to mint stuff, they're just asking to lose their valuable assets because they're going to be targeted. And that's why we see that happening so much. So Q&A.